I couldn't get the picture and sound to show, so I had to restart the computer in order to do the webinar. So that's the reason for the delay. I don't know why that happens sometimes, but when the sound and picture isn't coming up, I have to just shut down everything on my computer and restart it. And that takes a little bit because I often have a lot of things running on my computer. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for hanging in there and joining me tonight. Welcome. I just finished our first of the 2018 emotional healing workshops. I hope to schedule another one now later in the fall. We had a nice group of people who came in the 3 days of working with emotional healing and had a fabulous time. So it was great. So tonight we're going to continue our discussion of grief, and we're going to talk about the idea of hardening your heart. The what happens when you fail to grieve, and we're going to also talk about all the relationship of in love and relationships. So our lesson is love, relationships, and the open heart. And I want to start off by just basically saying that a relationship is basically a connection between two or more things. Connections also imply that there's some kind of exchange or dynamic going on between people or things. I point out that the animal kingdom has a relationship to the plant kingdom in that plants breathe in carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen, and people and animals inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide. So there's an exchange taking place between the plant and the animal kingdom. And of course, the other thing is that the plants produce food for us and we produce food for them in the way of fertilizer. So relationships imply this kind of exchange, and the emotional world is really the world of relationships, because relationships are all about emotions, and that's why we think of relationships as matters of the heart. So there's attraction or chemical affinity between people. We often talk about people having chemistry with each other, and the way chemistry works is it's based on electrical charges. Elements either are hungry for electrons or have extra electrons that they're willing to donate, and so they share electrons. And in the form of sharing electrons, the single elements become compounds. And so, as human beings, we have areas of strength, we have areas of deficiency, and we're attracted to people who tend to balance out or fix our polarity. One thing that I talk about in emotional healing that we're going to get into a little bit tonight is a concept I got from the book Sacred Plant Medicine. The idea that the heart is capable of not only transmitting electrical frequencies, which you're picking up on an EKG, but it's also capable of tuning in to electromagnetic frequencies, because as he says, anything that broadcasts electromagnetic frequency can receive electromagnetic frequencies. So the idea is that the heart is capable of detecting the subtle electrical fields coming off of other people, coming off of animals, plants, even different environments, and then decoding that information and transmitting it to the brain. In other words, the heart has the ability to directly pick up information without the five senses. And this happens because of something called synchronization. And this little picture here is designed to show the idea that if you have two metronomes and you stick them on a platform that can move a little bit back and forth, and you start them off out of sync, one going doop, doop, and the other one going boom, so they're out of sync, going the opposite way, they will gradually synchronize. They will adjust until both of them are moving at the same frequency. That's called synchronicity or synchronization. And this happens between people and between people and their heart. We get in sync with one another. We also have a synchronization with ourselves. When the heart and the brain are acting in their electrical vibrations, because the brain also has electrical vibrations, that's picked up on the brainwave scans. When the heart and the brain are in sync, okay, you have a feeling of internal coherence. And that creates a very positive feeling within us. We feel connected. We generally feel peaceful. We generally feel loving. And that is the result of personal integrity. What that means is that what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling and what I'm doing are all in sync. They're all harmonious. But often we are not internally harmonious. We're internally in discord. If we're thinking one thing in our brain and feeling another thing in our heart and acting another way in our life, people call that hypocrisy. But it's an internal discord, and that internal discord affects our health physically. So, as I mentioned, this has to do with heart-heart communication. We literally sometimes just tune into another person, and we entrain our heart. In other words, heart starts to synchronize with the electromagnetic pulses coming from another person's heart, which gives us a direct link of understanding. And we receive actually very complex information through this linkage, which is why we talk about having good vibrations with someone, being in sync with someone, where the two of us are actually like almost completing each other's sentences, really feeling like we understand one another, because something's going on that's communicating beyond the length of words. So, heart communication, good vibes, being on the same wave, being in sync. And all of this is a reflection of what we would call love. Love is an emotion of connection. So when there's a connection, when there's synchronicity between people, when they're entrained and vibrating together, we have a sense of love. When we're not vibrating, when we're disconnected, and either internally or with our environment, we experience what we call negative emotions: grief, fear, anger. They're all emotions that involving some level of disconnection. And so this is really important to understand. Empathy or compassion, which is, as teaching in the class this last weekend, is actually the basis of emotional healing. When we are open our heart and we have empathy or for another person when they're suffering, and we feel kindly disposed towards them, and we want to be there for them, we're experiencing compassion. We do this naturally with people we love. When they're hurting, we hurt. The word compassion is really common passion or common feelings, shared feelings. So when we're tuning into the other person empathetically, we're connecting with them in their pain and difficulty. And this is really an expression of love. Now, what's interesting to me about this connection is that when we share joy or happiness with each other, it intensifies the feeling of joy and happiness that we feel. However, the opposite happens when we share sorrow, pain, or suffering, or difficulty with other people. That actually diminishes. And I think it diminishes because the pain and the suffering and sorrow and all that is an expression of disconnection. And so when we feel someone connects with us when we're suffering, when they empathize or have compassion with us, the burden of our pain is lifted because we have a sense of being connected again. And so it takes away the discomfortable emotion. So for this reason, the heart is a moral compass for us. Through the heart, we sense our connection to everything and everyone. And if we have an empathetic heart, if we have a compassionate heart, it's very difficult to hurt someone, because if we hurt them, we feel their pain inside of us through empathy or compassion. And so we feel hurt too. So when we're open-hearted and we have empathy and compassion for other people, we have this internal moral compass that says, I need to treat you in a way I want to be treated. I don't want to treat you in a way I wouldn't want to be treated, because that would cause us to suffer. Now, the brain, on the other hand, rationalizes. People can rationalize all kinds of harmful things they do to each other, but the heart, because it can relate, doesn't rationalize. It can't justify the pain, because if it feels the pain, then we know that what we just did, we're just acting like a jerk. We need to ask the person for forgiveness and do something to make it up to them. So, and I also want to just mention, and this is again stuff that we really go into and work with in the workshops that we have, is when we open our heart to someone who is emotionally wounded or sick and allow our heart to entrain with ours, we actually can feel what's going on inside of them. And this actually helps us help them work through what they're going through. Plus, the other person feels the connection that we're creating with them, feels cared for and understood. And then as we move from sensing their wounds or stillness back to our own center of peace, they want to move with us, which actually aids the healing process. This is not something that's easy to explain in words, but if you actually, experience it, feel it, it's very, very real. Now, that leads into the discussion we have about the emotional state that we want to talk about tonight, which is hardness of heart, which is pretty much a universal problem in our culture. When we have unresolved pain that we never felt like we worked through, grief, sadness, sorrow, emotional hurt, we often respond by closing down our heart and not wanting to connect to other people, because we don't want to feel vulnerable. We don't want to desire a relationship with someone else, because that means we are capable of maybe being hurt again. So we develop a fear of being close to other people. We develop a fear of being empathetic. We develop a fear of being compassionate, because not being able to handle my own pain makes it impossible for me to be empathetic with another person who's in pain. I tend to become very inflexible, very rigid, dogmatic, judgmental, pharisaical, if you will, not having compassion on people who are suffering or difficult or having problems in their life, but looking down on them and judging them and so forth, instead of reaching out to them with love and compassion. And I would propose to you that this is a fairly universal problem in our culture, because when you develop a hardened heart, you become very self-absorbed. You're very narcissistic, very, very into yourself, and not able to really relate to very well or understand other people. It can make you very manipulative, very controlling. It can make you very emotionally distant and difficult to get close to. You're unsympathetic to other people. You're judgmental of other people. You may become arrogant, conceited, egotistical, and you tend to live in the world of your head. And in the world of your head, therefore, you can rationalize or justify all the mean and cruel things to other people because they deserve it, and, blah, 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 blah. And you disconnect from your emotions. And this is really, big in our culture. All the anger that people are expressing towards one another right now in the culture, all of the negativity and so forth, is really coming out of hardness of heart. As people become emotionally cold to each other because they're hurting, because they're in pain. And so I call this the disease of civilization. As people's hearts become increasingly hard, they lose the experience the ability to experience subtle emotions. Now, this is something that I figured out years ago as I was first getting involved in emotional healing. I realized that as people become more hard of heart, and they can feel less and less subtle emotion, people want to feel. We crave emotional experience. We want to feel something. All right. So if I can't feel subtle, tender emotions and subtle nuances of emotional behavior, in order to get me to feel something, I have to have things that are more jarring, more violent, more bizarre, more crude, even cruel, in order to stimulate me to feel something. So the increasing violence and crudeness in the entertainment industry, the bizarre, weird, just in your face, blatant kinds of things that go on in music, dance, movies, etc. The ability to have subtlety and character, and it's just really missing. I don't know how else to explain it. One of my favorite TV series is Anne of Green Gables. I've probably watched it about 20 times. And that it was done on PBS years ago. And there's so many beautiful little subtle emotions in that story. So many sweet, tender, there's laughter, there's sadness, there's, all of these subtle feelings and amazing development of character. You contrast that with a lot of movies that are out today that are just nothing but graphic special effects that are constantly bam, 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 with violence and crudity and anger, and or you look at like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. If any of you ever seen some old movies, and the amazing kind of thing, Gene Kelly, those people, versus the very jerking, something like twerking. It's crude in comparison, very crude. But the reason that people get that way is they become jaded. Their hearts become harder and harder. They're less and less able to experience subtlety and emotion, and all of this is reflected of a buildup of pain. Okay, and the universe is always trying to get you to soften your heart. So it'll bring you experiences that'll break your heart, trying to open it back up again, so that you understand and have compassion for other people. But a lot of people misuse that and just harden their hearts further. Now, Alexander Lowen, in a book I read a long time ago, explains how hardness of heart actually leads to heart attacks. He says that a rigid heart is not responsive to other people, to the environment. It's closed, it's tight. It's actually literally tense, because the tension, if the heart is able to subtly vibrate with emotions of what's going on around, and I make the heart more rigid, more tight, more tense, then it's less impacted by those vibrations. But he says what happens is you've got a heart. It's like a muscle that's been tight for a long time. And then something touches that heart. Something breaks through that armor. And the person feels something. And the heart wants to soften to it. The love or whatever, it wants to open up to it. And except for the fact that when that happens, now the person is in touch with all of their vulnerability and pain. And that creates a fear reaction that causes them to jerk back emotionally to try and stay in control, which throws the heart into a spasm and triggers a heart attack, and which ironically causes the person to lose control and become very, very vulnerable. It's an interesting discussion, and if you ever have a chance to read it, I think there's a lot of value in that, because what he explains is this thing of what I talked about last time, how your blood vessels dilate Your peripheral blood vessels dilate to open up, to be close to something, to receive love, to be open to life. And when you have an experience that shocks you or traumatizes you or quote unquote breaks your heart, all the blood rushes in, you become more cold, and so forth, until you grieve. And then the grieving process increases vasodilation and helps you open up to life again. But if you don't open up to life again, then you're closed down like that. And then all of a sudden something makes you want to open up and you're in touch with your pain. It causes an extreme reaction of fear. All right. So I'm really trying to get you to understand this, concept, but I also want in the same process to talk about how this relates, with relationship, because when we use the word love, as I mentioned last time, it's really referring to many different emotions and types of relationship. And in the Greek, they recognized at least 3 types of love: Eros, Philia, and Agape. And I relate these to the 3 basic levels of human exchange, which are judgment, which is the egocentric, hardened heart place of love, and Philia, which is the more open-hearted, family friend kind of love, and then Agape, which is the totally open, giving kind of unconditional love, which relates to the idea of mercy or compassion, being able to the first kind of love is one that is centered in self. So the way I perceive the world in that is, if something feels good to me or makes me happy or does something for me, it's good. If something doesn't, then it's bad. So if you're either on my side or you're against me. All right. Philia is a love that recognizes that there's reciprocity in relationships, that you're not going to want to be around me very long if I don't do good things for you. So I invest in relationship. Okay. I do things for you. You do things for me. We invest in each other and we have good feelings towards one another because we're exchanging somewhere, and it's kind of fair. And I would propose that all long-term relationships, whether it's a marriage or a family or even relationship between a business and its customers, all are based on that level of love: justice, equality, fairness. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. All right. The idea of win-win. But Agape, which is the unconditional mercy level of love, seeks nothing for itself. It is not a love that is trying to get anything, which is totally opposite of the love of Eros. It's a love that only wants to have goodwill towards everyone. So this kind of relates to a really good book called Energy Leadership, in which he talks about 7 levels of energy. And the 3 here are kind of the same kind of thing I'm trying to talk about. The egocentric unconscious level, which is the judgment level, is characterized by apathy or grief and anger. The lowest level, he says, is wallowing in your victimhood of self-pity. All right, which is basically I lose. And a step up from that is you wake up and you get mad and you go, okay, I'm not going to lose anymore. I'm going to make you lose, which is anger. Understand? So grief and anger are very low level vibrations, centered in a sense of disconnection, disempowerment, and also in judgment. Either, I lose and you win, or I win and you lose. Follow? Self-mastery, which gets into what I call the justice level of love. Forgiveness, compassion, and peace. Or what he says is, okay, the step up from you lose is I win, meaning I suddenly get the idea, okay, I'm responsible for what I need. I will take care of, but I will find a way to win, to get what I want. And I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to let go of your need to fix it for me. So I'm going to forgive. I'm going to move on. I'm going to win. And then compassion, which step up from that, is now that I have learned how to kind of have a little bit of self worth and can produce things, value for myself. I look and see you, and I have compassion. I want you to win. So I go from I win to you win. And then he says the step up from that is we both win. I win, you win. Having relationships based in that. And then above that is self-transcendence, which is being fully conscious, which is joy, which actually gets into the idea that there are no winners and losers, that really it's not about winning and losing at all. It's about connection. All right. And so forth. So a very interesting book, but relates this idea. So Eros love is associated with pleasure. We love something on an Eros level when it brings us pleasure, when it does something for us. All right. And this causes, as I said, a physiological change, dilation of peripheral blood vessels, which increases blood flow. That causes our skin to become warmer, which is why love is warm and not cold. It brings more color and redness to the skin. Passion is red. It's not white. The sensation in our skin is increased, causing a heightened sense of touch and other senses. So we hear better, we smell better, we see better, where in other words, we're taking the world in more. So love is open and receiving, not closed or shut down. The eyes and skin sparkle or glow. That's why love is radiant, love is light, love is not dark. Okay, and the muscles relax and movement becomes more graceful and less stiff, which is why love is graceful and flowing. It's not awkward or tense. So in other words, we intuitively understand that the state of love when we're open, right? And we naturally open to what brings us pleasure, okay? Which is Eros love. But remember, this is a love based in what this does for me, right? I'm because I perceive this thing as pleasurable or good, I love it, and I open to it, okay? Often what happens, of course, is that what we love turns out not to have pain and whatever, and we go through grief and so forth, and that's where we can shut down and become hard of heart, not want to get close to anybody, not want to have that experience of being open. Philia love is a word in Greek that refers to loyalty to friends and family. So this kind of love has a little bit of a less selfish attitude. The idea of virtue, that I need to be good to people, right? That I need to treat people fairly, that, there has to be exchange. And this creates a more deep, lasting level of love than Eros, because this kind of love causes people to make sacrifices for the benefit of others. I may forego some personal pleasure in order to help you, win. And then you do the same for me, and we have camaraderie or friendship, and there's a sense of equality. The third word here, agape, is used throughout the New Testament to refer to the sacrificial love or the unconditional love of God. And it's the kind of love that was translated as the word charity in the King James Version of 1 Corinthians 13. And to understand this kind of love, you have to understand, because here's the thing, since all human love is very conditional, all right? To understand agape, you have to learn what agape is not. And this is some stuff primarily came from some books by Anthony DeMello. But I mean, I've also experienced agape love myself many times. And when we do emotional healing work, we tune into agape love. And that's where the healing takes place, okay? Because agape love is not self-centered at all. Eckhart Tolle in The Power of Now says, if your love can turn to hate, it was never love in the first place. That's because if you were actually experiencing agape love, godly love, divine love, unconditional love, there's no way you would care how the other person responds to that love. You understand? In other words, if the other person didn't reciprocate, if the other person treated you meanly or whatever, it doesn't matter, because there's no self-interest in agape love. It's Eros love and hate that are the opposite. Because in Eros love, I only love something because of what it does for me. And if it stops doing that for me or whatever, then I hate the thing that I formerly loved. All right. It's not even Philia love. Okay. I mean, even Philia love doesn't turn so readily to hate. It usually turns more to indifference. Okay. But here's another thing. Agape love is not blind. Anthony de Mello says, it is said that love is blind, but is it? Actually, nothing on earth is as clear-sighted as love. And he goes on to explain that it's attachment and desire. The desire, of course, being Eros love, and attachment being a part of the Philia love, that's blind, because it actually, our own inner desire and our own inner thing that we're investing in the relationship causes us to not see people and situations clearly. We see them through the eyes of our desire. We see them through the eyes of what we're hoping for in return. We don't see clearly. So it's agape love that sees clearly. As I came to understand, if God sees all of us perfectly, knows everything about us, and all he feels towards us is love, then if we're seeing someone through anything other than the eyes of love, we aren't seeing them clearly. We're not seeing them as God sees them. And I've often, since I learned this, said a prayer, and I've taught this to other people, and other people have tried it too. You ask God, this person that I'm struggling with, this person I'm having difficulty with, help me to see them as you see them. Because even though you may still not want to, be close to them, you're not going to hate them if you see them as God sees them. You're going to have compassion for them. You're going to see, hey, they're screwed up. Okay, so not a good person to be around, but I can't hate them. I see them through the eyes of compassion because I totally understand them. Another aspect of agape love is it exists in freedom. There's nothing in agape love that wants to force anybody to change. Or manipulate anybody to change, or persuade anybody to change. All force is associated with Eros love. When we're trying to force someone to give us what we want, or compel them to give us what we want, or in Philia love, we often bribe them, or by rewarding them, or punish them, maybe not by being angry or whatever, but by withholding. Okay. These are all, things that we do because love is a gift. Love is not something that can be forced. The only thing you do with a gift is receive it. You can't control it. You can't. If you can control it, it ceases to be a gift, and therefore it ceases to be love. If that makes sense. If somebody owes you something, that's not love. Okay. If somebody exchanges something with you, you do something for them, they do something for you. That's not love. That's exchange. It's not agape love. Agape love is someone does something nice for you just because they want to. There's no way you can control that. You're not in control. You're surrendering to it. So the moment you try to control someone or want them to change for your benefit, you've actually ceased to love them, at least on an agape level. Okay. The other thing is agape love is not special. Okay. Agape love is not the love you have for your children. It's not the love you have for your spouse. It's not the love you have for your friends. All that is Philia love. Okay. Because agape love is universal. Agape love is the love you feel for everyone. And like I said, your ability to experience agape love is reflected in the compassion you can have and the sense of love you can have for someone you don't really like or that you regard as evil. It's the love you can have for Hitler. Okay, it's the love you can have for Mao Zedong. It's the love you can have for Stalin, for Lenin, for depending on your political persuasion, Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. I mean, it's the love you have for everyone. There's no differentiation in agape love. It doesn't differentiate between one person and another. It's just there for everyone. It's a love that comes from just the giver themselves, not because of anybody deserving it or having earned it. And that's why Anthony DeMello explains that it's indiscriminate. Agape love arises from you just being who you are, which means you're incapable of not giving it. And he talks about, does a lamp decide, are you a good person or a bad person if I'm going to give you my light? Does the tree decide, are you a good person or a bad person if I give you my shade? Does a rose decide, are you a good person or a bad person if I'm going to give you my fragrance? No, it just is. It just is, and it does what it does. The rose gives its fragrance to everyone indiscriminately. The lamp gives its light to everyone indiscriminately. The tree will give its shade to you, even if you come to cut it down. Because if it didn't do it, it would cease to be what it is. So if God ceased to love you, he would cease. Because God is love, he wouldn't exist. God is love. So there's no way he cannot be love, if that makes sense. And when you are in agape love, you are indiscriminate. You give of your gifts to everyone. You don't question, do they deserve it or do they not deserve it? And furthermore, as Anthony DeMello points out, you aren't even conscious that you're being loving. You're just being innately compassionate and kind, which I think is reflected in the thing here from Matthew when, God divides sheep and goats. The righteous say, when did we see you hungry and feed you? When did we clothe you? When did we give you drink? When did you see a stranger and took you in? We're not aware that we did anything good. Okay? We're not aware. When did we do these things? Right? That's the nature of agape love. It's not thinking, oh, I'm doing this good thing for you, which is a sense of ego. You see how you can't acquire agape love of your own. It's really a gift of God that flows through you, not something that you generate within yourself. And agape love doesn't invest in people. It doesn't want anything in return. If you're giving of yourself and you're upset because they didn't say thank you, that wasn't agape love. That wasn't unconditional love. That was Philia love, which there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I want you to understand, there's nothing wrong with erotic love. There's nothing wrong with Philia love. You just have to become aware that that's not the same thing as unconditional love. Okay? If you're acting out of unconditional love, it doesn't matter to you whether the person received what you had to offer or not. It doesn't matter whether they said thank you. It doesn't matter. It's just you. That's you. You're going to do it because it's your nature to do it. Understand? So this is the bottom line point. You can't create agape love. I, as a human being, cannot create that kind of love. All of my love as a human being is conditional. I like people who are nice to me, right? I want to be around people who are nice to me. I want to be kind to people who are kind to me. I'm selfish, right? I'm a human being. I'm selfish. I'm innately selfish. I want things for me. So the only way that you can experience agape love is if you open your heart wide enough, if you soften your heart enough, if you let your heart be broken open enough that you connect to the divine source of love, the unconditional source of love, and then let it flow through you to others, then you're connected to the source, and you are the branches. I am the vine, you're the branches. If you abide in me, if you connect yourself to God's love and let it flow into you, like the sap feeding the branch of the tree, you'll bear fruit. You'll be able to actually give real love, agape love. But if you aren't connected to God, if you aren't tuned into that, you can't do it. Your all of your love will be tainted with self-interest. It will be impossible for you to give that level of love. And like I said, you have to go into your emotions and be willing to let your heart break. Willingly let your heart break wide open, so that you can feel your connection to God and everything. That's why heartbreak and sadness and grief and disappointment and loss are actually potentially divine gifts, because in your dark night of the soul is when you have the capacity to find the light of God and connect with it and find where the real source of love is. It's not out there in other people. It's not out there in the things of this world. It's something that is beyond this world that you have to connect to. And it's what your soul is most hungry for. Whether you recognize it or not, it's what you're longing for. And you'll never find it in other people. You'll never find it in relationships. You'll never find it in business success or in, material wealth or anything that this world has to offer. Okay? And so look at this is a translation of 1 Corinthians, part of the 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. Remember what I said? Agape love doesn't try to control or manipulate everybody. It exists in freedom. Okay? It's not proud. It's not self-conscious. Okay? It's patient, kind. It's not irritable. And it keeps no record of being wronged. In other words, if you're holding on to all the pain and the things that bad people have done to you in the past, you're not abiding in agape love. You're stuck down in those lower levels of consciousness. The I lose, you lose, or whatever. And you've got to rise above that. Okay, it does not rejoice about injustice. So in other words, it isn't happy when people are treated unfairly, but it rejoices whenever truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures every circumstance. Okay, that's a very interesting description of agape love that I'm sure all of you have heard before. So the whole, I'm going to see if anybody's been typing questions while I'm thinking. I don't. This is a concept that when I started to do this work, I began to experience this connection, this heart connection with people. And yesterday when we were in class, one of the people who's really gotten very good at doing this kind of work, Elliot, who's worked with me here, he was saying, it's like, it's so interesting. He says, I know I'm good at this, but I'm not doing it. I said, yes, I know. That's exactly what it is. What you know is that you've learned to be good at stepping aside and letting the unconditional love of God do this through you. All right. Well, as people harden their hearts and they become more cruel, and obviously abuse and violence and trauma make people harden their hearts. And so when we're doing emotional healing work and we're being compassionate, open, and understanding that people are acting out of their pain and their suffering and whatever, and we're helping them go in and heal that, and they start to reconnect with love, they all of that gets kind of washed away. But to abide in that, you have to start learning to become a conduit for it. Once you have touched that unconditional love, the only way to keep it with you is to become a conduit through which it flows from you to other people. All right? And that can only be done through an open heart. It can't be done through a closed heart. You can't love people with a closed heart. Let's see. Now let's see if anybody's made any comments or anything I need to do. I have a hard time getting the stuff to scroll here. The chat. Come on. Someone says this explains why I'm seeing so many violent commercials. Yeah, I mean it's violence in general. Our whole culture is filled with violent images. I mean, to the point that if you indulge in this stuff, it really makes you jaded. You really get to the point where you because it's so violent, you get numb to it. And that's exactly the negative effect of this that you don't want. You don't want to become numb, which is why you really need to guard what you let into your mind and let into your consciousness so that you can keep your heart soft and open. You can't have healthy relationships if you're closing down your heart towards other people. I mean, okay, even if a relationship turns out not to be functional, and you know that you need to leave it, for your own safety or protection or whatever. If you have an open heart, you won't leave it in hatred. You won't be leaving because you hate the other person. You'll be leaving because you know it's the best thing for both of you. Peace and love always went out in the end. What I've covered tonight, I probably could spend 2 or 3 hours on. So I hope that you were able to at least, get the gist of it. I would recommend you kind of ponder it. I'll probably in some of the future courses come back to some of these concepts and elaborate on them even more. But for tonight, I just want everybody to understand a few basic things. One, okay, when we get hurt, we pull away, we withdraw from life, and we close down. The grieving process, which I discussed last week, is the process by which we let our broken heart soften us, and when we let go, so we can rediscover light and peace, and the real source of our happiness and love. If I resist this process, I will harden my heart. I will become increasingly cold and insensitive to other people around me. And I will then, because I'm having trouble feeling, start seeking out stuff that makes me feel, which is going to be more coarse, jarring, and jaded because it tries to hit me to go through. As someone just typed out, if you're open-hearted, you actually avoid all that stuff. You don't want to watch violent movies. You don't want to listen to violent. You don't want to listen to music with horrible, disgusting lyrics and jarring rhythms and whatever. You seek out more the harmonious, peaceful, beautiful, whatever, because you can feel the beauty of subtlety. And as you do that, everything becomes more beautiful. One of the people yesterday in the class, after I had an experience, he says, I've been looking out the window because I can't believe how beautiful the flowers are, because it opens you up to see the beauty of life when you have an open heart. That's why when you're in love, even in Eros love, you are, everything seems more beautiful. You know what I'm saying? Everything seems more beautiful. The music is beautiful. The stars are beautiful. Life is beautiful. Everything's beautiful because you're open to life. You're open to the goodness of life. And the more you close down, the less you can enjoy life. So this is why it's very important to help people go through their grieving process, let go of their pain, find forgiveness, find healing so they can open back up to life and experience the beauty and wonder of life and closeness with other people and so forth. And I didn't get the handouts posted to the video here. I will be posting them. I did actually post them on the class page at modernherbalmedicine.com. If you email me, if you need help accessing the class page, if you haven't been able to register for the class page, you don't know how, email me or call our office at 800-416-2887, and we'll help you get logged in so you can get the handouts. Someone just says, I appreciate the example of the Rose. Love just loves. That's exactly. It flows from divine love. God loved us even though we're imperfect and we do bad things, because that's his nature. He is love. And then and when you start to realize that your love in relationships is very conditional, it doesn't mean that you want to get out of relationships. It just means you need to realize that and recognize that there is a selfish reason why you're in relationships, and openly work to, with each other, to have compassion for each other so that you are nourishing and feeding each other. But ultimately, the real source of love is not some other person. And when you are connected to the source love, maybe when at those times when your spouse or your partner or your friend isn't there for you, someone is there for you. And you're able to move through that with greater grace and ease, even though it's still a little painful or whatever, than you would if you weren't connected to that. In closing, I'd like to say I was showing some people at the class yesterday our member area. If you want to, support what we're doing, really the easiest way to do this is to go become a member at stephenhorne.com, and it's $19.95 a month, or you can, if you pay 6 months or a year in advance, it's less per month. And we have a webinar series called The Holistic Perspective, where every month I do a webinar on some topic related to self-development or emotional healing or mental attitude or so forth. And also we do health webinars. We have a big database of webinars from the past and so forth that you can listen to, as well as a database of information on herbs and so forth that we're doing. And so appreciate any of you who would like to help us, keep going so we can continue to do this work, to go and become a member, or if not, if you could make a donation or whatever. If not, can't do any of that financially, then at least could you remember us in your prayers and help us to move this work forward, because I have a vision of wanting to get this emotional healing work out to thousands and thousands of people. And I'm excited because more and more of the students that have gone through some of our programs are actually successfully going out and helping people and reporting wonderful results with people, a wonderful healing experiences with people, so that work is starting to grow. Someone just said something that's very true. She says, if someone is not ready to receive love, you cannot force it on them. I learned this the hard way. I was verbally attacked when I tried to pass some of the things I have learned in these classes on my family members. You have to learn to read people and approach them when they're ready. Yeah, there's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And what's easier to be, what you have to learn to do is just be an example of it. Be the light. Internalize this, like I said in the class. It's stephenhorne.com, not stephenhorne.org. stephenhorne.com. If someone, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah. If you want to help people around you heal, apply this work to healing yourself. Because as you change, as you heal, as you internalize these things, it will automatically bring about changes in people around you, because you're connected, and it will actually help them change without you having to try to say anything or do anything or whatever. So just, if your family members aren't ready to listen to this stuff, then just work on yourself. And as you work on yourself, you'll find that people in your family will see the changes in you. And as they see the changes in you, that will open them up to wonder what's going on and how can I do this too. Anyway, I started a little late because I was had a hard time getting my computer started, but thanks for everybody who has hung around. It's time for us to say goodbye. And next week, we will move from talking about desire and grief to talking about fear and anxiety and the opposite of that, which is courage. And so courage and faith. So we'll hopefully, oh, wait a second. No, I don't know. It's not next week. I just remembered something. Next week, I'm gone. So let me pull up my calendar. I think the next class actually won't be we're taking a break for 2 weeks. So the next class actually will be June 4th. So I'll see you in 3 weeks, June 4th. Thanks for watching, and good night, everybody.